Consider for a moment a contradiction so profound that it should rewrite everything you believe about fear itself. A sparrow sits perched on a wire as a 40-ton truck thunders past, its engine roaring, its mass enough to flatten a building, and the bird does not so much as ruffle a feather. Moments later, a well-fed lion, an apex predator with claws designed to disembowel, strolls beneath that same wire, and still the bird remains serene, utterly indifferent to a creature that could end its life in a single heartbeat. And yet, when a lone human being, unarmed, empty-handed, standing 50 meters away, simply stops walking and slowly turns their head, that same sparrow erupts into a state of absolute screaming panic and vanishes into the sky. This is not cowardice. This is not stupidity. This is the most sophisticated threat assessment system on the planet, making a calculation that you have never been taught to understand. To comprehend this terror, you must first understand what we truly are in the eyes of the natural world. We are not merely another animal. We are Earth's only hyper-predator, a creature that has shattered every rule the food chain has spent 4 billion years constructing. Every other hunter on this planet is bound by the cruel arithmetic of proximity. It must close the distance, expose itself, and gamble its own body in the final lunge. We did something no organism had ever done before. We weaponized distance itself, and we fused it with conscious, premeditated intent. To a bird, we are not a predator that hunts. We are a predator that decides. And it is that decision, telegraphed through the subtle pivot of a skull and the focusing of 2 forward-facing eyes, that the avian brain has learned to dread above all else. Within that small, feathered skull lies an organic supercomputer running calculations of staggering geometric precision. Every bird in your vicinity is, at this very moment, mapping an invisible 3-dimensional cone of threat around your body. A living equation that scientists call flight initiation distance. This is the exact radius at which the perceived cost of remaining stationary finally exceeds the metabolic cost of flight. But to call it a reflex would be an insult to its complexity. The bird's mind is performing real-time trigonometry, plotting your trajectory, your velocity, the orientation of your shoulders, and the vector of your gaze, all continuously updated dozens of times per second, each variable weighted against millennia of inherited data. What is truly chilling is the granularity of this system. A bird can effortlessly distinguish between a human walking along a predictable oblique path, a commuter whose body language broadcasts indifference, and a human who has, for 1 fraction of a second, locked their eyes onto it. It registers a change in walking speed so minute that no human observer could perceive it. It detects the shift of a foot angle by a mere 5 degrees, interpreting that tiny rotation as the first geometric signature of an ambush. This is not instinct in the crude sense. This is high-level cognitive threat profiling, a constant, silent interrogation of human intention, and the moment your body betrays the faintest hint of focused attention, the equation collapses, and the bird is gone before you ever knew you had been judged. But why is this dread carved so deeply into the very architecture of avian DNA? To answer that, we must descend into 100,000 years of inherited horror. Every traditional predator that ever stalked a bird killed within the reach of its own anatomy. The snap of a jaw, the rake of a talon, the strike measured in inches. The world, for all its dangers, operated by an understandable logic of closeness. And then we arrived, and we introduced into the natural order a concept so alien and so terrifying that nothing had ever evolved to anticipate it. Death that travels. Imagine the psychological abyss of the projectile from the bird's perspective. The stone that crosses an impossible gap. The spear that erases the safety of distance. The arrow, and finally the firearm, that turns 100 meters of open sky into a killing field. For countless generations, the brutal logic was absolute and unforgiving. A bird that permitted a human to approach within 30 meters did not flee, did not learn, did not reproduce. It simply died, often without ever perceiving the source of its own destruction. The ones that survived were not the brave or the curious. They were the paranoid, the hyper-vigilant outliers who fled at the first ambiguous twitch of a distant silhouette. And so the evolutionary cull was merciless and total. Every modern bird you will ever see is the exclusive descendant of the most neurotic, most suspicious, most relentlessly fearful individuals their species ever produced. Their courage was bred out of them, generation after generation, by the silent verdict of the projectile. The serenity they show toward lions and trucks is the calm of an animal facing a threat it understands. The terror they show toward us is the inherited scar tissue of an apocalypse that has been hunting their bloodline since before our species could write. And yet, here lies a paradox that threatens to unravel everything. If the fear of humanity is an inescapable genetic trauma seared into the avian soul, then why do the pigeons, crows, and sparrows of our great cities boldly snatch crumbs of bread directly from our outstretched fingers? Why does the terror seem to evaporate amid concrete and traffic? The answer is not that these birds have lost their fear. The answer is far more sophisticated and far more unsettling. The urban bird has not surrendered its paranoia. It has refined it into something approaching genius. In the dense ecosystems of our megacities, birds have actively cataloged humanity into rigid behavioral castes, sorting our chaotic species into categories with the cold precision of an intelligence agency. They have learned to filter the harmless, white noise of the daily commuter, the millions of indifferent bodies flowing past without intent, from the deliberate, repeating patterns of the provider, the human whose posture and rhythm signal the offering of food. This is not blind trust. It is a transactional ceasefire built on relentless observation. And, crucially, even within this adaptation, the ancient terror remains fully armed, simply redirected towards specific high-risk profiles. The same pigeon that eats fearlessly from a pensioner's hand will explode into flight at the erratic, unpredictable movements of a child, whose chaotic energy defies all threat modeling. It maintains absolute vigilance around an off-leash dog, and it reacts with primal dread to any human carrying a long, linear object, an umbrella, a walking stick, the extended leg of a camera tripod. Because the silhouette of an elongated tool reaches back across 100,000 years to the memory of the spear. Now we arrive at the most chilling capability of all, found within the formidable minds of the Corvids, the crows, the ravens, the magpies, and their cunning relatives. Decades of rigorous scientific experimentation have confirmed something that borders on the supernatural. After a single negative encounter, a crow can memorize the precise features of an individual human face and retain that memory, sharply and specifically, for years. It does not fear humanity as an abstract category. It opens a file on you, a personal, individual dossier of grievance. The sociological dimension of this is genuinely disturbing. When a crow identifies a human it has classified as dangerous, it does not keep that knowledge to itself. It broadcasts your description to its entire flock through specific acoustic warning calls, mobilizing dozens of birds against a single offender. And then it does something almost beyond belief. It physically transmits this hatred across generations, teaching its offspring, birds that have never once encountered you, to recognize your face and to despise it. A child of that crow, hatched years after your transgression, will scream in alarm the instant you appear. You become a name on a transgenerational blacklist, hunted by descendants of a bird you may have wronged only once, watched and judged by a society you never knew was observing you at all. So the next time you step onto your balcony in the soft light of morning, a cup of coffee warming your hands, and a bird perched on the railing instantly bursts into flight at your arrival, understand that you have not witnessed an accident. You have not triggered a random, meaningless reflex. You have just watched the flawless execution of a survival algorithm 100,000 years in the making, a calculation refined by an unbroken chain of ancestors who survived the only true apocalypse their kind has ever known. That small creature vanishing into the sky is not a coward, and it is not a fool. It is a perfect, paranoid masterpiece of evolution, a living survivor of the age of the hyper-predator, and it has just looked into your eyes and remembered exactly what you are.